Hey guys, did you recently hear that UCs are going to go test blind in a couple of years? If so, tune in. I'm going to clarify in this video that policy. I'm going to talk about some questions that have arisen. Is this going to affect the ability of UC colleges to be ranked? When is this going to start? What does it mean to be test blind? And is this going to affect the University of California's reputation in any way? And is this a good decision from an admission standpoint? Is it going to increase diversity? Is it going to get rid of unfair testing? What are all of these factors that are going into it? I'm going to give my take on this. If you're wondering who is this lady anyway, my name is Brooke. I've been teaching SAT and ACT prep and working as an independent college consultant for the last, decade and a half plus, almost 2 decades now. I've created a total online course system to prep for those. We have students who've scored perfectly on the ACT, who've taken our ACT course. We have students who've scored near perfectly on the SAT course. You can go check those out at SupertutorTV.com if you're looking for an awesome and cool way to prep for either of these tests that is customized. It's like private tutoring at scale to the best that we could create. So definitely go check it out. We have a whole new platform launching summer of 2020. So also stay tuned because our courses are going to get even more awesome. We also have books on Amazon.com. I have 2 ACT math books. They are the most thorough math books that I know of. So go check those out. Other things that we've got going on. I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you're interested in these kind of stories, this is the kind of stuff that I'm retweeting. So follow me and you can learn more. And above all, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's super easy. All you have to do is click subscribe. And it's totally free. And I have free test prep. I have free college admissions advice. It's all free. So who doesn't love free? Come and join us, and we appreciate it. Okay, awesome. Let's talk UCs. University of California recently announced a new testing policy. The regents, which are the political people who hold the puppet strings for the University of California, have decided that for the next 2 years, they're going to go test optional. What that means is all of you guys who are going to be seniors next year, the rising seniors who have been juniors and are graduating into senior year, you guys are test optional. Test optional, as you guys know, means that you don't have to send a test score if you don't want to, but if you send one and it's awesome, they're going to look at it. And my advice as a tutor is whenever anybody is test optional, you want to send a score if your score is good, right? I mean, University of Chicago, one of the top schools that has been test optional for a while, says that. They're like, if the test reflects your ability, send it. We want to know, right? If you have awesome test scores, please tell us. That will impact your admissions. Okay, for the 2 years after that, so that means everybody who is finishing out 9th grade right now and finishing out 8th grade, it will be test blind for in-state students is all that they have announced. They have not announced that it will be test blind for out-of-state. What that means is they will not look at your SAT or ACT score, even if you want them to. They're going to ignore them and not look at them at all, except for maybe for some data analysis after the fact, if you want to send it to them. There's still going to be some people who will have to take those. If you're doing an NCAA sport, for example, you're still going to have to take it because you've got to hit NCAA clearinghouse. Some people are still going to take it probably because they want to qualify for scholarships or national merit or other things. But if you're applying, the college will not require you to take it, and they're not going to look at it at all. So let's talk about test blind. Let's talk about the history of test blind, who else is test blind, all that kind of good stuff. So first of all, barely anyone in the whole country is test blind. There are lots of test optional schools, but not very many test blind schools. Why? Well, one theory is rankings. So historically, U.S. News & World Report, which releases that top list of colleges, is a real power player when it comes to college admissions, because if you're on that list and you're high on that list, more students will apply to you, you have more prestige overall, then you get to have the pick of the litter when you select students for your college, you get to have wonderful students come to your college, and it's this self-perpetuating cycle of wonderfulness, right? But U.S. News has a policy that they won't rank test blind schools. That means if you won't accept test scores at all from the ACT or SAT, if you don't have any test scores, they will not let you onto their list. And that has dissuaded a lot of schools from getting involved in test blind. But test optional, on the other hand, actually can help you game the rankings, some say. This is all speculation, but some say. And the reason they say it can help you game the rankings is that when you make it test optional, generally the kids who have good test scores are still going to submit those test scores. And the kids who have crappy test scores won't. They'll hide them. And so then your average test scores and your median test scores and your 25th to 75th percentile ranges of accepted students are going to potentially shift upwards, right? Because the students who have the crappy test scores are the ones who are going to hold them back, and the ones with the good test scores are going to submit them. So all the test scores in your pool are going to look really shiny and awesome. And so that could help inflate your ranking because your test scores look like they're super hyper competitive and more competitive than other colleges potentially. So that's one thing that I will say is that some schools are trying to game the ranking system. And that's one reason that some people have proposed that they go test optional. The University of California is in a unique position that they have sort of these giant in-state pool and an out-of-state pool. So the question is, if they go test blind for all the in-state students, what's going to happen to their ranking? Are they going to get it pulled out from under them? Are we going to live in a world with no UCLA or UC Berkeley ranking? I reached out to US News and World Report to ask, and their chief data strategist, Robert Morse, got back to me and said, US News doesn't currently rank test blind schools, but does rank test optional schools. The University of California's new policy would still be test required or test optional in terms of the SAT, ACT for out-of-state and international students, and this would not be considered test blind by our current methodology. So there you go. They're not going to get booted as of now if they keep the testing optional and possible, even if they just allow those test scores to come in from out-of-state students who want to prove themselves. So as long as they will consider them from out-of-state or international students, boom, they can stay on the US News and World Report list. Woohoo! That being said, we don't quite know yet what they're going to do with the international students and the out-of-state students, but there's the official word. So they're not necessarily going to affect rankings. And so this is a different game for them than it is for these other colleges that have gone test blind. Let's talk quickly about those other schools that have gone test blind. One of them, Sarah Lawrence College, was test blind for a little spurt back in 2012. They're no longer test blind because they didn't like not being ranked, and that affected their ability to attract candidates, right? If you're not ranked, people don't know how to find you because a lot of students just apply to schools based on US News and World Report's rankings. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it. I'm just saying that's the reality. Hampshire College in 2014 went test blind. They're probably the biggest example ongoing that has this policy. As a result, they saw that they dropped out of the US News rankings, and they also saw a decrease in the number of people applying. But they have been able to enroll more low-income and minority students than ever before than when they had to look at test scores. So they're celebrating. They think it's wonderful. Other schools that have been test blind, just for fun fact, Northern Illinois University announced in 2020 January that anybody with a 3.0 or above can automatically get admission. So that's kind of cool. Loyola New Orleans announced in May 2020 that they're going test blind. So they're not going to look at your test score at all for admission. But again, it's lower the number of applicants. Is it going to do that for UCs? Well, if they can keep their ranking, it might not. I think particularly there's another part of this UC plan, which some of you might be aware of, that after they go test blind for 2 years, their plan is to unveil a new standardized test that is just for UCs. Now, there's been a lot of criticism around this idea because if there's a new test for UCs only, I guarantee you people like me, are going to try to help students prep for that test as well. So just because you switch tests doesn't mean that you get rid of a lot of the problems that standardized tests introduce, which is that students who have more financial resources are going to potentially have more options to prep for it, or that it's going to be a burden on students who don't have a lot of money because they might not have money to prep for the SAT and prep for the UC admission test, or they might not have time to prep for both. And so what you might see is a decline in people who are applying to UCs overall. Okay, so let's talk about test blind and what it's going to do for diversity. So I also detailed a study earlier this year about how UCs did some research to see were test scores predictive of student success at UC campuses. And that study basically found, yes, the ability to graduate within a short amount of time. They found that test scores are predictive even for students from underrepresented minorities and from poor backgrounds when it's taken in context, that it's helped them predict the success of those students, in fact, more so than GPA, and I found that really shocking. As a result, the Faculty Senate, which are like all the faculty who are bigwigs within the UC school system, voted unanimously, 51-0 with one person in absence, to continue using standardized tests as a consideration in the admissions process for UCs. And then the Regents met and they voted the exact opposite. Let's talk about who are the Regents, by the way. The Regents are basically people with some political clout and business clout. They're people like Sherry Lansing, who used to run Paramount Pictures, or like Richard C. Bloom, the husband of Senator Dianne Feinstein. So basically, they're not necessarily educators. They don't necessarily have any background whatsoever in education. And they're the people who are deciding how students can get into UCs, for better or for worse. In any case, what's my thought? My thought is I love test optional. I think test optional is the best of both worlds because lots of students have lots of different talents and qualities. And one way that we can measure their success is with tests, right? You allow kids to shine when that is their way to shine, but you also take away some of the weight that standardized tests have, which is the idea that they aren't a perfect measure of people's intelligence, and they don't measure everyone's intelligence. They measure a particular kind of person's intelligence. If you're intelligent in that way, I think that's awesome, and you should be able to share that. And so that's kind of my take on it. I'm a huge fan of test optional. I am not a huge fan of test blind, because I think it opens the door for grade inflation that is going to become more important potentially. And essays are going to become more important, and those are pretty subjective measures, and they're not as objective, and there's something kind of objective about testing. It's not perfect, and I think it needs to be looked at in context. You need to look at it according to who the peers are of that person who's taking the test, but I still think they can be useful. So are tests predictive? Yes. Are they necessary? No. Not for everyone, but are they helpful? I think yes, in context. That's all I've got for now. I hope you guys like this video, so please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Comment below what your thoughts are on this whole test blind thing. What do you think? Should we be test blind? Should we be test optional? What's your game? I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.